Right after rain, a quiet yard can suddenly look alive. The odd part is not one bird. It is how fast the yard changes. They do not arrive like confetti. They seem to use roots. The first clue is usually not the bird. It is the ground. Rain can soften the ground just enough for the hunters to test it. One pull is only the beginning. Other birds read the same yard. The yard is not offering just worms. Rain also stirs tiny things under leaves. On a dry afternoon, the same patch can look almost sealed shut. Watch the feet. Many birds test the yard before they commit. The best clue can be where a bird refuses to search. Rain moves the small world before birds ever land. Small birds often work the edges, where rain has loosened the mess. Even a rich yard is still an open yard. The moment the shadow passes, the yard starts again. After rain, the yard can become quieter in a useful way. A robin does not have to see every meal first. When one bird owns the best patch, others work the margins. The margins can be just as revealing as the center. A little lifted edge can become a doorway. A wren treats the wet yard like a puzzle of seams. The same rain can create different jobs for different birds. The cool after-rain window can make the search easier to risk. But the window does not stay open forever. The clearest clue is not only where they land, it is where they leave. Now the same strip looks less mysterious. Worms do not appear for the birds. They are reacting to the wet ground, too. That is why the first minutes after rain can feel so busy. For smaller birds, the prize may be almost invisible to us. A soaked leaf pile can become as important as the lawn. Sometimes one bird's search exposes food for another. Then, for a few seconds, nothing seems to happen. Birds often wait for the yard to feel safe again. The fastest path is not always the path they choose. A larger bird can reset the whole little crowd. Even bold birds do not search every spot equally. When the big bird moves on, the small traffic returns by degrees. The rain does not only change the lawn, it changes the trunks too. A rain magnet can have levels, but the center of the mystery is still the ground under your feet. A fresh mark can become a clue for the next searcher. Not every shiny wet spot is worth a search. Even slower ground feeders may change where they search after rain. A puddle is often a signpost, not the whole reason. Notice how often the action happens beside the water, not in it. As water sinks away, a new strip can appear. First the ground softens, then the edges open. Then the birds shift with a drying line. The arrivals can come in waves because each bird waits for a different signal. The first wave often belongs to birds willing to test open ground. The second wave may wait for proof that the yard is safe and useful. When they finally enter, they do not spread evenly. Some birds arrive only when the edges are already active. A bird at the edge can be part of the story even if it does not enter. A tiny gap can change the next decision. The cardinal is not chasing the crowd. It is choosing a specific edge. Rain can pull the garden down to bird height. Even a hummingbird may patrol differently when the garden is freshly wet. Some of the food is not on the ground at all. A little warmth can wake one corner before the rest. But once that patch dries, the signal changes again. Crows may read the whole yard from above before stepping in. The same yard can feel rich and risky at once. When the danger moves on, the clues are still there. You can learn a lot by watching the marks after the rush. Tomorrow, look first for the dark seams, not the biggest puddle. A robin usually tells you which line is active before you understand why. Small birds often make the same choice in miniature. If the line is wet but clean and hard, Birds may pass it by. The messy seam is where the story starts again. That fresh after rain feeling is also a sign that the yard has changed. Rain can wash leaves and reveal movement that dust hid. The clue is tiny, but the bird acts like it matters. Sometimes the clue is a movement so small that only the bird reacts. The first move can decide who gets the prize. When several birds keep returning to one narrow strip, that strip is telling you something. The clearest clue is often the last thing a bird checks before it leaves. When the center goes quiet, look at what stayed damp. Edges can stay damp longer because shade and debris protect them. That is why the yard can keep attracting birds after the first rush fades. After the tiny rush, larger clues can still remain. Underneath is where rain often leaves its best secret. After rain, small objects can act like little roofs. A wren may inspect several pockets before committing. The little clump was not random. A good feeding spot is only useful if the bird can leave safely. Every bird leaves a clue in the route it chooses. After the rush, the yard looks ordinary again, unless you know how to read it. Look for tracks, castings, flipped leaves, and dark seams. If one damp seam keeps marks while others dry, watch that seam. Then, just as the yard seems empty, one bird proves the clue right. One bird may leave behind the clue that brings the next one in. But once the loosened spot is empty, the birds stop arguing with it. The active spot is the one that still moves. That is when the quick birds move in. A slower bird may choose a steadier clue instead. Broad patches can hold small scattered food even after the dramatic pulls are over. As the ground dries, the rush becomes a careful search. Before leaving, a bird often checks the safest last edge. What remains is a map drawn in tracks, castings, and flipped edges. Now the opening rush is not random anymore. First, rain softens the ground. Second, rain lifts leaves and exposes tiny insects. Third, puddles point to softened edges, not just water. Fourth, the cool, quiet window can make the yard easier to use. And finally, birds use cover roots to reach the best wet spots. After the next rain, watch one wet seam for 5 quiet minutes. The first sign may be a pause, a head tilt, or one tiny step into soft grass. Then the yard answers, one small movement at a time. That is the secret. Rain does not bring birds to nothing. It reveals what was hidden. Tell us what bird appears first in your yard after rain. Because after rain, the secret is already waiting in the grass.